So PR is known as the dark arts sometimes. It's known as a pile of bullshit. We're here today at the 4-Hour Workweek group in London, and many of you might know that Tim Ferriss's PR that he uses sometimes is a guy called Ryan Holiday. He wrote a book called Trust Me, I'm Lying, The Confessions of a Media Manipulator. So there's this big reputation in PR that actually what you're doing is you're cheating your way. You can do that, and there's also the other side. PR, you don't have to pay for, and I think as most of us here are startups today, that comes as good news. You don't have to pay for PR, and what I'm going to show you doesn't cost a single penny. So at no stage will you ever have to fork out a single pound from what I'm about to show you today. PR, I think, is defined as creating and managing a reputation of your company or yourself through the media. The exciting thing today is, though, that everyone is the media. You are the media. You've got your blog, you've got your social media, you've got your sites, the newspapers, the magazines, the online sites, but even your competitors are media opportunities. Even they have sites and Twitter profiles and stuff like that that you can use. Your fans, your consumers, your potential customers, they're all the media. When people think of PRs, they think of this little guy with a black address book and the secret contacts, and he calls up this journalist a bit like the Devil Wears Prada, and it's like, hey, can you get me this little interview in the Daily Mail, please? No, that is gone. If you want, you don't even have to meet a journalist. You don't even have to know their name anymore. It's great if you do, but you don't have to, right? So that's the first stage of PR Lab. What is PR? And now I'm going to try and say very quickly how to do it. And the first thing I must stress is you don't just rush into PR where you're like, hey, I've got this product. How's it going? Can you write about it? That's completely wrong. The first thing, like any business plan, and that's essentially what PR is, it's a part of your business plan, is you have to do your research, right? So the first step to PR is research. It's bloody boring, but it will help you a long way. The usual things. Who's your target market? The next question is, what media are your target market reading? So Tech City is a place in London. It's also known as Silicon Roundabout. There's loads of tech sites. So the media that people in Tech City tend to read is there's a place called Tech City News. There's the Guardian tech blogs. There's TechCrunch. There's Engadget. There's even Mashable. Those are the kind of things that answer the question, what is the media in that area? So the first question, who is my target audience? The second question, what are they reading? You've got to know that before you even start. Because if you just go in with your product and your story, it's like a scattergun approach. Which target market am I going to hit, right? The next question is, who are the individual journalists within that media? So which journalists should you talk to? For example, there's a site called Tech Radar, some of you might know. There's a deputy editor there called Mark Chaxfield. That's an example of, right, that's my target market, that's what they're reading, that's an influential person that I need to go and speak with. So when you're doing this homework, you need to pretend I am the consumer, you need to get into their mind, you need to say, well, what am I currently reading, and who am I reading it from? As you're doing this, you should be recording everything into what's known as the media list. This will become your Bible. And as you create your startup right from the beginning, someone wrote a question before this event kicked off saying, when's a good time to start PR? When's a good time to invest into PR and marketing? It's right from the beginning. It's right from the idea stage. Because when you're writing your business plan, you probably Googled around, you probably read news articles and stuff like that. Every single news article you read about your competitors, about similar products within the same market, those are all people and media outlets that you can potentially reach. And you should be writing down in a nice little spreadsheet the name of the journalist, the publication, and then any contact information you can find. So I'm about to show you how you can find their email, but also things like their Twitter. that's what your media list looks like. And as you do your research, you should be filling this out. And we want hundreds of names here. I'm not talking one or two nice little people. We're talking about hundreds. Now, let's say your business, as I'm sure some of you will have, has various target markets. For example, let's say you're a platform that has the potential to reach lots of different niches. For example, Jose at the back holds a company called pickevent.com. That company is a platform which curates events based on your particular niche. So if you're into professional business, corporate stuff, you'll get that. If you're into technology, it will find that. If you're into fashion, it will in the future be able to do that. So if you've got all these different avenues, then potentially what you should be doing is creating a media list for each of these niches. Now, the job of the PR, you know how I said at the beginning that everyone, all of you, including your competitors, your potential consumers, and everything like that, you are all media opportunities, right? That's just the life that we live in now. Everyone's a YouTuber, everyone's a blogger. Because there's so many, it's like, how am I going to reach all of them? There's just like so many. The job of the PR or the PR job, the efforts that you do, is to filter that by researching which people have the biggest reach and will have the biggest impact. So what I do professionally and what agencies do is they say, well, we could go to 10,000 mummy bloggers because you're selling nappies and each of them have 100 reach. Or we could just go to one article on the Daily Mail online, mailonline.com, and that will reach the same number of people within your target market. Therefore, it makes sense to concentrate our effort into getting this one piece because it reaches the same volume. In other words, you have a greater return on investment. You know, if you've got staff, time, staff costs money. Now, there is, of course, the other option. We could say, let's go to 10,000 blogs. And that's absolutely fine if you've got the resources to do it. And there are some niches where blogs are much more influential than the bigger guys. So often I receive the question, should I go for social media? Should I go for blogs? Or should I go for the traditional newspapers and stuff like that? This comes down to this. What media are your target market reading? So today, we're here as startups. Put your hands up if you've bought a newspaper in the last 6 months. What's that, 15%? Hardly any of you. So in terms of if I was selling something to you guys, that very quick question has shown, right, if I'm going to do PR effort, forget newspapers, forget them. Put your hands up if you read a blog in the last day. 100%. So I'm a platform, I want to sell to you, I'm going to target blogs. That's how you figure that out. Who should I go for first, right? So you want to make your media list, and this takes time. And imagine a spreadsheet, at the bottom how you have different tabs. What I like to do is I like to split it out. So I'll say national journalists here. For example, the Times, the Financial Times, the New York Times. Then I might go consumer weeklies, depending on what my business is that I'm promoting. And this might be magazines. You know the shop W.H. Smith? People always say magazines are dying. You've been in W.H. Smith or newsagents? There are hundreds of magazines for sale still. Yes, they're dying, but that doesn't mean they're dead. There are still millions of people that buy magazines. You should still be concentrating on them and don't just ignore them because they're dying. It's like a slow death, right? Yes, they will be gone soon, let's say 4 or 5 years, but that gives you 4 or 5 years to still reach an audience. You should still be going for magazines. Magazines tend to have a weekly subscription or publication rate, or a monthly publication rate, or a quarterly publication rate. You should research these. What are these guys writing? Who are the journalists? And you can do that by going into the store, opening up a few pages and looking at the journalist's name, writing it down. Then you go online, then you search for their Twitters and stuff like that. How do we find their email? 2 ways. You go onto a free site called journalisted.com. Can everyone read that? Journalisted.com. It's a free database of all the main journalists. You type in their name, it will come up with their email address, it will come up with their recent articles, it will come up with their Twitter and all relevant information. That's probably the best free way to get it. The second way to do it is to call the magazine or the publication itself. And if you go to any magazine or any website, they always have a contact number. And when you speak to them, and I'll come on to talk about how important the phone is, when you speak to a journalist, you can just ask, hey, I'm doing this. I'll be really interested to talk to you. Can I get your email address, please? Honestly, I do this maybe 15 to 20 times every single day. It's one of the best ways to build up your media list. If you get to the receptionist and they think you sound a bit dodgy, who's this guy? Who's calling me? Pretend to be an advertiser. Pretend to be an advertiser. Why? Because as an advertiser, you're saying, I've got potentially £100,000 to pay you. Who's going to refuse that phone call? There would be a fool to. So one way to get around this is to pretend to be an advertiser. This is somewhat unethical, but you know, we're startups, we are bootstrapping, we're trying to get our way. Potentially in the future, you might just be an advertiser, right? Of course, Twitter is a massive way to talk to journalists now. Quite often I'll send a journalist a tweet saying, hey, I've got some news for you, can I have your email address, please? They'll happily share it. You could search Journalisted for the name of someone that comes there, and it would come up with just their email address. Another general rule of thumb is, like all corporate emails, tends to be the case that the email address is firstname.lastname@title.com or .co.uk, 90% of the time. If you get a bounce back, try something else without the dot. There's actually an article on growhack.com about Reportive and trying to generate email addresses to find people. And there's a free Excel template where you type in the first name and the last name and the business address, and it will come up with about 50 suggestions. And then what you can do from those suggestions is that you can type them into Reportive, and it will say whether it's correct or not, so you can just go down. So we've kind of discussed what PR is about. We've kind of said, right, before you even think about your story and stuff like that, you've got to do your research. Who's my target market? What are they reading? Who are the journalists talking about it? And finally, I should add, influencers. So there are some people that aren't necessarily your kind of general sense of media. For example, for technology, there's a guy called Stephen Fry. You might have heard of him. He would be considered a massive influencer in the technology space, as well as sort of inventions and literature and a lot of niches, actually. And you should note down who these influencers are.